So get this, BlackRock just came out and said they're not doing an XRP ETF anytime soon. And here's why that's actually a big deal. We're talking about BlackRock here, the absolute giant of asset management. Like nobody, and I mean nobody, manages more money than these guys do. I can't remember the exact figure off the top of my head, but we're talking something like 10 or 11 trillion dollars under management. That's insane money. When BlackRock speaks, the entire market listens. Think about it. When Larry Fink, their CEO, finally gave the thumbs up to Bitcoin and those spot Bitcoin ETFs, that was basically the signal everyone in traditional finance was waiting for. Suddenly, all these big players just dove right in. That's the kind of influence this guy has. He's like the ultimate market kingmaker. So seeing XRP get shut down by Larry Fink and BlackRock right now, yeah, that stings a bit. And honestly, it caught me off guard. I mean, think about it. There are like a dozen companies scrambling to get their XRP spot ETFs approved by the SEC right now. No other altcoin even comes close to having that many firms fighting for it. XRP is literally leading the charge on this front. So what gives? Why isn't BlackRock jumping all over this opportunity? Well, I actually got some insider perspective from someone in the XRP community who's been working in finance for decades. And their take really helped connect the dots for me. I'll admit I was scratching my head at first, but once I heard their breakdown, things started clicking into place. Look, I don't think BlackRock is just going to sit this one out forever. My gut tells me they're definitely going to launch something eventually. We just have no clue when that'll happen. But hey, before I dive deeper into this, let me just throw out the usual disclaimer here. I don't have any fancy finance background or anything like that. I'm not your financial advisor, and you definitely shouldn't be making any buy or sell decisions based on whatever I'm rambling about. All right, so here's where things got interesting today. The Block just dropped this story this afternoon with the headline about how Ripple's marathon SEC lawsuit wrapping up might or might not shake up the whole XRP ETF situation. So get this, everyone's been thinking that once Ripple's legal drama finally ended, the big players like BlackRock would come swooping in to file for their own XRP ETFs. But nope, the world's biggest asset manager just basically said, not happening right now. Here's what went down on Thursday. Ripple and the SEC's lawyers got together and said, you know what, let's just call it quits on these appeals. Boom, legal battle over, just like that. Quick refresher on the whole mess. Back in 2020, the SEC came after Ripple, claiming they illegally raised $1.3 billion by selling XRP as an unregistered security. Fast forward to the ruling, and Judge Torres in New York made this really interesting split decision. She said Ripple's programmatic sales, basically the automated blind auction stuff, were totally fine and didn't break any securities laws. But their direct sales to big institutional investors, yeah, those were securities violations. And here's a crucial detail that gets missed a lot. She was talking about the transactions themselves, not saying XRP is inherently a security. Big difference there. Now, after Thursday's news broke, Nate Karachi from Nova DS Wealth, you might know them as the ETF store, threw out this theory that maybe BlackRock was just sitting back waiting for all this legal noise to die down before they'd even think about filing for an iShares XRP ETF. Look, in my opinion, it makes zero sense for them to ignore crypto assets beyond Bitcoin and Ethereum, Karachi posted on X. Otherwise, they're basically saying Bitcoin and Ethereum are the only ones that will ever have value. Bold. And yeah, that's a direct quote from the guy. But here's where it gets kind of brutal. And I actually feel bad for Nate Karachi on this one. So Friday morning rolls around, and man, sometimes life just hits you like a freight train, you know? I mean, his logic was totally sound. It made perfect sense. Why would BlackRock limit themselves to just Bitcoin and Ethereum when there's this whole world of crypto out there? His thinking was completely rational. But the timing, oh man, the timing was just chef's kiss terrible. His post about BlackRock diving into XRP ETFs and all that optimism, let's just say it aged about as well as milk left out in the sun. I hate to be the one to point it out, I really do. But yeah, it went from fresh to sour real quick. That said, and this is important, just because his timing was off doesn't mean he's wrong about the bigger picture. This stuff could still totally happen down the road. But anyway, check this out. So Friday morning on the Crypto Prime podcast, Karachi's show, he threw out this interesting theory. He's thinking maybe BlackRock. So here's Karachi earlier being all optimistic, like, oh yeah, they're probably just waiting for this legal mess to wrap up. Then boom, XRP ETF incoming, question mark. And then BlackRock spokesperson drops this reality check. At this time, BlackRock does not have any plans to file an XRP or Solana ETF. So it's not even just XRP getting the cold shoulder here. Right now, they're keeping their crypto game locked down to just Bitcoin and Ethereum. That's it. But honestly, I don't buy for a second that this is how it's going to stay forever. No way. So here's Nate Karachi's post from literally last night. And remember, this guy's the president of Nova DS, used to be the ETF store. He goes, yes, I think BlackRock was waiting to see this before filing for iShares XRP ETF. And he's sharing that official document we talked about, you know, the one where the SEC and Ripple basically said, yeah, we're done with these appeals. Then Nate doubles down with, I'll own it if I'm wrong. In my opinion, makes zero sense for them to ignore crypto assets beyond Bitcoin and Ethereum. Otherwise, they're basically saying Bitcoin and Ethereum are the only ones that will ever have value. Bold. You know what this whole thing reminds me of? Coinbase. Way back in the day, I'm talking 2017 here, which is actually when I first dove into crypto. And get this, Coinbase literally only had 3 coins on their entire platform. 3. And this was after they'd already been around for several years. They had Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin. Then at the end of 2017, they launched Bitcoin Cash, but honestly, that wasn't shocking since it was just a Bitcoin fork anyway. Everyone saw that one coming. So now there were 4. And then radio silence. For the longest time, they didn't add a single thing. They were being incredibly picky about what made the cut. I think they were absolutely terrified of what might happen if they started adding a bunch of coins, because let's be real, back in 2017, people already thought the whole crypto space was sketchy. Given that reputation, Coinbase probably figured that since they wanted to be the most trusted name in crypto, they'd rather play it safe and let competitors take those risks. So this whole Twitter drama unfolds, right? And out of nowhere, Eric Balchunas swoops in. Dude's basically crypto Twitter royalty at this point, sitting pretty with 363K followers. He built his whole reputation by obsessively tracking every Bitcoin ETF rumor, leak, and behind-the-scenes whisper. Guy's got serious Bloomberg street cred as their senior ETF analyst. Well, he totally called BS on Nate's prediction. This was yesterday before Nate face-planted, at least short-term. Eric's response was classic. Nah, I don't buy it. Hell, I'd probably throw down a steak dinner bet against it. Nate shoots back, thoughtful, what's your reasoning? Eric's like, look, I think they're perfectly content with their 2 ETF setup. Adding more, that's just chasing smaller and smaller wins at this point. But full disclosure, I'm basically running on pure instinct here. And there you have it. His hot take, no filter. Everyone's got their own angle, you know. Eric's essentially like, we bagged the big fish. Bitcoin's going to be the trading powerhouse anyway. And he's not wrong about that. But here's the thing. Fast forward a few years, and I bet XRP is going to have way more buzz around it. We're actually in this sweet spot right now. Grabbing XRP on exchanges when basically nobody, and I mean less than 1% of all humans, has ever even touched it. That's pretty wild when you think about it. Time's going to change that equation big time. But yeah, I see Eric's logic. Every coin you move down the pecking order, you're cranking up the risk dial. You keep pushing further out on that risk spectrum and the rewards start shrinking. That's his whole thesis right there. Then someone drops the $1 million question. All right, so where's the cutoff? Should they just go ham and add 5 or 6 more? Valid point. So I hit up this XRP community legend, Frecky. Guy's been riding the crypto wave since 2011 and has this monster finance background. I had to know, what's BlackRock's chess move here? If they're planning to jump in down the road anyway, why let their competitors plant their flag first and start building that market grip? So Frecky drops this bombshell. BlackRock's got this insane pull with advisor networks. They can hoover up assets lightning fast through all these registered investment advisors who basically worship the ground BlackRock walks on. So being first, not really their concern. For pretty much every other company out there, being first is everything, make or break stuff. But Frecky's argument, BlackRock's playing by different rules. They can just waltz in whenever they want and basically steal everyone else's lunch money. Actually, then he gets into the really juicy part. They're literally one of the few players who can just sit back, watch how much money's flowing into competitor funds, then casually stroll into the market and still dominate the asset game.
Here's his example that really drives it home.
Tons of investment committees. They've got these super exclusive approved lists, and it's basically just ETH and IBIT for Bitcoin ETFs. As long as BlackRock keeps their fees competitive, it's all about that brand power. He continues, look, if BlackRock tried to charge crazy high fees compared to everyone else, then yeah, committees would start asking questions. But in the registered investment advisor world, BlackRock's like the gold standard. And here's the kicker, advisors are already dealing with this super volatile, risky crypto stuff, so they want the most bulletproof name they can find to justify it to their clients. Saying, we've got BlackRock Bitcoin in your portfolio sounds way better than we went with Grayscale. Image is everything. Yeah, and coming from someone who's actually lived in both worlds, traditional finance and crypto since 2011, that perspective really hits different, you know? It's basically exactly what I was thinking a few minutes back. They're pulling that classic Coinbase move. And let everyone else chase the shiny new toys while we play it safe. The difference is they know they can swoop in whenever they feel like it and just demolish the competition. If that's really their game plan, then fine. They want to be ultra conservative and basically leave money sitting on the table for now. But here's what I think happens next. They're going to watch these other firms rake it in, and that FOMO is going to kick in hard. They'll want their piece of that action. It's the Coinbase story all over again, right? They started super picky, then eventually said, screw it, and listed basically every coin that wasn't a complete scam. BlackRock will probably follow the same playbook. So there you have it. Initially, yeah, this news was pretty deflating and caught me off guard. But after hearing these different takes, at least I can wrap my head around it. Maybe it's not just a bunch of clueless executives throwing darts at a board and making terrible calls. But honestly, I still think they're leaving money on the table here. Like, they'd probably be doing way better financially if they just pulled the trigger now instead of sitting on the sidelines watching everyone else cash in. But hey, if they want to play it ultra safe, that's their call. So who knows what happens next, but I'm betting one morning we're all going to wake up to some headline like BlackRock launches XRP ETF, and we'll all be like, finally. Sure, they'll be fashionably late to the party, but whatever. Here's the thing though, this doesn't really mess with us in the short run. I still think XRP is going to absolutely explode this market cycle. That's just my gut feeling anyway. I'm definitely not a financial advisor, and you should never buy or sell anything just because I'm running my mouth about it. That's like investment advice 101 right there.